Back to the daily grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Yo, the UFC is back. 2014's very first card. Jeremy Stephens versus Doo Ho Choi. It's January 14th in St. Louis, Missouri. Let's get to these predictions, man. I can't wait for these fights. I mean, it's only been 5 days since UFC 219, and we ain't gonna have fights this weekend tomorrow. Unfortunately, the UFC's taking a week off. Wait, so it's gonna be, damn, when's the 14th? Sunday. It's a Sunday card. I was thinking there's no way that's a Friday if tomorrow's, or that's a Saturday. So this is a Sunday card. That's interesting to know. The UFC is usually on Saturday, so January 14th will be a Sunday card in St. Louis. But I'm still going to be watching this card. All 4 cards on the main card are stacked. Michael Johnson's also, going down to featherweight on the prelims. So there's another fight on the prelims I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but these are going to be the main card predictions. Some of you guys know I went 4 for 4 in my UFC 219 predictions. The Jimmy Rivera fight was canceled. I did my predictions before that, so take that prediction off. I predicted the other 4 fights right. We got the Carla Esparza beating Cynthia Calvillo. We got Neil Magny beating Carlos Condit, and then of course Chris Cyborg won her fight in the main event versus Holly Holm. And in the co-main event of UFC 219, of course, Khabib Nurmagomedov's spectacular performance versus Edson Barboza. So we went 4 for 4 last week. But of course, we don't go 4 for 4 every week, but we try. So with that being said, let's get to UFC Fight Night. It's Jeremy Stephens versus the Korean Superboy Doo Ho Choi. I'm going to start this off with the first fight on the main card, which is a fight that was originally not on this card. This fight was originally scheduled for UFC 219, Emil Meek versus Kamaru Usman. Emil Meek, I believe, had visa issues. Looked like the fight was either going to be moved to UFC 220, and then now it's officially moved to UFC Fight Night, Stephens versus Choi. Usman is the dark horse of the welterweight division. Emil Meek is a guy that's got a lot of momentum behind him. He got a win over Rousimar Palhares, who is like, a common enemy in the MMA world. A lot of people don't like the way Rousimar Palhares holds on to his submissions after the bell and stuff like that. So whenever Emil Meek upset Rousimar Palhares, it got him an interview on the MMA Hour. He eventually got a UFC contract, and then he also got his first win in the UFC over Jordan Main, and it was a good win for Emil Meek. Continued his momentum. Now though, he's been he was campaigning for a ranked opponent, and be careful what you wish for, young men, because the only ranked opponent right now, I believe, that would take the fight is Kamaru Usman, and Kamaru Usman has really been looking for a top 10 ranked opponent, but the thing is, a lot of guys aren't really looking forward to fighting Kamaru Usman. As I said, he's the dark horse of the division. So in this fight, I'm going to be taking Kamaru Usman, and the reason I'm going to be taking Kamaru Usman is, as I said, Kamaru Usman can't get a guy in the top 10 to fight him, so he's forced to keep extending his win streak versus anyone who will accept the fight with him, regardless of rank. So he would have liked to fight a top 10 guy, but he's fighting an unranked Emil Meek. Emil Meek was looking to fight a ranked opponent. Unfortunately for him, he drew the dark horse of the division. So with that being said, I'm going with Kamaru Usman to extend his winning streak to 7 fights in the UFC. And every single fight Kamaru Usman has won in the UFC, all 6 of them, he's outstruck his opponent. He's scored more takedowns than his opponents. He's just dominated every fight that he's been in. So that's why a lot of people don't want to fight Usman. So given the fact that Emil Meek has some momentum, he was reluctant to take the fight, but he accepted it. So we'll see how that goes. If Emil Meek does win, it will be an upset. And hey, expect a left hook. But other than that, Usman. Next, Paige Van Zandt versus Jessica Rose Clark. This is going to be a good fight, man. Whenever I saw Jessica Rose Clark UFC debut, I became an instant fan. It was a great fight versus Beck Rawlings. It was either in Sydney, it was in Australia, I remember that. But in that fight, these girls, I believe they were friends. Jessica Clark took the fight on short notice, and she still, man, super entertaining fight, was throwing her strikes with vicious intention, and it was a very entertaining fight. So she earned a shot versus Paige VanZant. We all know Paige VanZant is a fan favorite for sure. She's been on Dancing with the Stars, but she's also an elite fighter. She was an elite fighter in the women's strawweight division. She's 1-2 in her last 2 fights at strawweight, but it could have been because of her bad weight cuts. If you remember, I believe Paige VanZant had the story where she like passed out trying to cut down to 115 pounds. So now that the 125-pound division is open, she shouldn't have her weight cut affecting her. She's only got 2 losses in her career. Those 2 losses were to the current strawweight champion, Rose Namajunas, and also to Michelle Waterson most recently, where she was submitted, I believe, in the first round submission. But yeah, her only 2 losses are to the Karate Hottie and the current champion. Other than that, Paige VanZant, man, she's got a win in her last 3 fights over Beck Rawlings, the girl that Jesse Clark also just beat. If you remember, it was like that dope ass like front kick to the face, like not straight front kick, but like a jumping, like karate type kick. So I don't know the fucking name of the kick, but either way, spectacular knockout for Paige VanZant in that fight. Other than that though, I'm picking Paige VanZant. I was leaning toward Jesse Clark, but that was just like a prisoner of the moment thing. I'm a fan of her in her last performance, but Paige VanZant's moving up to a new weight class. She's coming off a loss, and I'm just gonna pick her to get back to winning. I mean, she hasn't never lost 2 fights in a row in her career, and hopefully it doesn't start here. I mean, rooting for Paige VanZant to get this win, just because, you know, she's one of the people in discussions for maybe getting a title shot in the 125-pound division. I'm still a fan of Rose Clark. I still think she's got a bright future. Both of these girls have bright futures in MMA. I think Paige VanZant's only 23 years old. She's already 14-2. It's pretty crazy. So I'm picking Paige VanZant in this fight, but I would not be surprised if Jesse actually came out and upset a lot of people. With that being said, moving to the co-main event of the main card, Uriah Hall versus Vitor Belfort. This is gonna be a good fight, man. Both of these guys have they're on very similar sprees right now. They're both 1-3 in their last 4 fights. Both of these guys just got wins to end their 3-fight losing streaks. Both of them are coming off of the win that ended the streak, and in both of those fights, they were losing to those opponents. Uriah Hall was losing the fight to Krzysztof Jotko, got a spectacular come from behind knockout in the 2nd round. I believe it was fucking dope ass. It was dope to see. Vitor Belfort, I believe, lost the fight to Nate Marquardt. They were in Brazil. Vitor Belfort's hand was raised, so he won the fight, but a lot of people would argue differently for Nate Marquardt, but it is what it is. So with that being said, both of these guys are coming off of wins. But now, if you just dig a little into their 3-fight losing streaks, man, they've lost to some of the best middleweights in the world, especially Uriah Hall, though. He's been fighting, like, the best middleweights in the world. He fought Gegard Mousasi, and all of them arguably in their prime as well. Uriah Hall's 3 losses before beating Krzysztof Jotko was to the current champion, Robert Whittaker, Derek Brunson, who's one of the most underrated middleweights in the top 10, and also to Gegard Mousasi. Now, Vitor Belfort also has lost to Gegard Mousasi, but he also lost to Jacare, and then also arguably Nate Marquardt, and then also he was knocked out by Kelvin Gastelum, which was overturned when Kelvin Gastelum tested positive for marijuana. But Vitor Belfort was getting knocked out. He got knocked out by all 3 of his opponents before fighting Nate Marquardt, and then you know how that fight went. So I'm picking Uriah Hall to get this W, man. Vitor Belfort's 40 years old. We all know the history. He's a legend of the sport. But unless he decides to like go full Brock Lesnar and say fuck USADA right before the fight, you know what I'm saying? Like keep that shit on the low until right before the fight, and then boom, gotcha, bitch. Comes that month, you know, comes the weigh-ins jacked, and everyone's like, yo, how did this guy get through how did he get through? You know, he pulls a Brock Lesnar and says, I'm going out with the bang. I'm picking Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall, you know, he's going to probably come in and throw some dope-ass spinning shit, some ninja. He might get a knockout with that. You know, we saw how he knocked out my boy Gegard Mousasi, one of the GOATs. A little bit of a fluke there, but it is what it is. Uriah Hall is one of the dopest, exciting middleweights to watch. And he's been fighting the best of the best. Got a dope come-from-behind knockout over Krzysztof Jotko. And, of course, we also always got to root for Uriah Hall because that MMA dipshit's over there. You know what I'm saying? You know, you guys get the point. We're not even going to mention that. But with that being said, Uriah Hall, I'm picking Uriah Hall. Main event of the night. Main event of the evening. holy smokes, this has potential to be fight of the year contender early fucking 2018 easily. Doo Ho Choi, his last fight was end of 2016, December of 2016 versus Cub Swanson. Fight of the year contender for 2016 for sure. In that fight, Cub Swanson did a majority of the striking. I believe it was 111 to 77 of strikes landed, but still, Doo Ho Choi definitely landed his fair share of strikes. Cub Swanson won the fight, back and forth fight, but in Jeremy Stephens is also, like Cub Swanson, one of the most experienced strikers or experienced fighters Doo Ho Choi will have fought. Doo Ho Choi is 3-1 in the UFC. All three of his first fights in the UFC were first round knockouts, and then he fought Cub Swanson. That was his only loss in the UFC, as well as the only fight he didn't get a knockout. Now, Jeremy Stephens, he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights since losing to the current champion Max Holloway, and in those 2 losses, one was to Frankie Edgar, who took him down 5 times, and the other loss was to Renato Moicano, I believe is how you say his name. It was a split decision. Renato was then undefeated when he fought Jeremy Stephens, and it was a split decision win where he took down Jeremy Stephens, I believe, twice. But I don't see Doo Ho Choi winning this fight with his wrestling. You know what I'm saying? He's definitely more of a striker coming in there. Got 3 first-round knockouts in his fight versus Cub Swanson. He scored 1 takedown, but Cub Swanson scored 2. Neither one of those guys are wrestlers, and you know, at that point, it could have been like a desperation takedown because Doo Ho Choi was kind of definitely getting clipped up in that fight. So, you know, a lot of people were surprised. Even Cub Swanson was surprised, like, yo, this kid just would not go down. Everything I threw at him. So, Doo Ho Choi is a warrior. And one quick thing, I haven't done a video on this. Doo Ho Choi, I believe, has like 1 year left before he has to go back to the army. Like the army, I don't know all the specific details, so I'm not going to elaborate. But I think he has 1 year left, and he's going to be going back into the army. Doo Ho Choi, that's one thing. He hasn't been very active, and I think that's got something to do with it. In since 2016, I mean, his most recent layoff after Cub Swanson is probably due to training and also healing up after that fight. It was definitely a war. And one thing I wanted to say about that fight is I'm picking Jeremy Stephens, but Doo Ho Choi, expect him to come in here sharp, focused, and motivated, training harder, bro. There's this kid I grew up with, like, you know, one of my friends to this day. His name is Wei. Anyways, one of my Asian homies, and he like super smart, college, all that stuff. And I remember one time, bro, he got an A on his test, and he was like pissed off. Like, bro, I thought I got 100%. I knew everything. I came in prepared, and he was mad that he didn't get 100%. And I was like, yo, you got an A on the test, an A on the final, an A in the class, but he wanted that 100. Now, Doo Ho Choi. Now, check me out. Now, whenever he's been getting A+, 100% in all of his fights leading up to his fight versus Cub Swanson. First round knockout, first round knockout, first round knockout. Versus Cub Swanson, he probably wanted a first round knockout. That would have been an A+. He ended up getting a loss. It was a great performance, but what would that be? Maybe like a D, maybe an F if you consider a loss. You know, if he would have just got a unanimous decision, we could have called that like, you know, a B, a knockout in the 3rd round, an A-. But I'm saying, he can't be happy. You know how it is. All right, jokes aside, I'm just saying he might have went back to the basics. 6 months of healing, 6 months of fucking training camp, and he might be coming in here extra motivated to get back on the winning streak. So I'm picking Jeremy Stephens, but Doo Ho Choi is a spectacular fighter, and he might come in and get the job done. So these are my predictions: Usman, Van Zandt, Uriah Hall, Jeremy Stephens. It is what it is. Thanks for watching. Let the full-time family know what you're talking about in the comments. And I went for 4 for 4 last week. Haha, I'm out. I gotta say that because some people come in here, fucking the first time I ever went under 50%. Oh, nice predictions, bro. But they ain't saying nothing about my 4 for 4. So alright, I'm out. P.S. Shout out and big thank you to Travis A for the $5 donation. I just noticed that whenever I went to make the thumbnail and, you know, do my thing to make the video. So, boom, at the top, you see it now. Thank you. First donation of the year. Much appreciated. Travis A coming through with the $5. It is what it is, man. Let the full-time family know what the fuck you tell me. God, I'm supposed to stop cussing. I'm out.
Da 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 da! It's the motherfucking D-O-double-G!